Phew. All right. Howdy, y'all. I'm Russell Taylor. I am a geographer, and by day I do geographic information science for a large real estate information company. But after hours, like after these hours, I am interested in land use policy and transportation type topics at the municipal level primarily. And so tonight we're going to be talking about Nerd Nite's nasty neighbors. And Nerd Nite has, during my experience with it, and I think the total experience of it, had 3 different locations: the North Door, Vigilante Gastropub, and Barrel of Fun. Now, although separated geographically, these 3 locations have one important thing in common. People don't want you to get to them or from them for various reasons. Vigilante has 2 different impediments to it. Barrel of Fun here, you may see when you leave, has 1, and North Door has many. But what happened here exactly? This is how it started. The step in like practically every transportation problem in Austin is I-35, which began with the city plan for Austin, 1928. This was both the carrot and the stick which caused segregation in Austin. It's actually the work of some consultants, naturally, from Chicago, I believe, who realized that they could not, by act of law, say all the people of color have to live east of East Avenue. And so what they did instead was simply move all the services for them, which they could segregate east of East Avenue. So if you want to go send your kids to school, get plumbing, city sewer, that sort of thing, you have to move to the east side. And this is at a time when people of color lived all across the city. Now, why is this important? Well, we had to take this land, right? Everything we have here is stolen for relatively free, which made it into a commodity that once it's taken, then becomes something that is of value and must be protected. And so in order to protect the value of the land in the wealthier, wider parts of town, people of color had to be pushed away from it. And that was due to another issue, which is redlining. You see, the federal government in its largesse decided that they were going to back home loans, but only ones that were not too risky. As you see, things might be hazardous if they're over here. And of course, we know that in 1928, a certain set of population was forced to live over here. Now, you see the dividing line between over here, these lovely best areas, which are still, by the way, the most expensive areas to live in town. These still desirable areas, the definitely declining areas here in yellow, is this line right here. And that was East Avenue. And so after World War II, Ike goes to Germany, sees that they have a wonderful Autobahn system, says, I want one so I can move tanks in case the Russians decide to invade. So he said, here's money, states. You decide where to put your new interstate highways. And what did the people west of the highway do but decide to build a big fancy wall of steel cars, all American, rushing up and down this formerly bucolic boulevard right down the middle of town. This, by the way, down here, this is the little baby North Door back when it was still a warehouse. Isn't it so cute? Oh my goodness, you can practically hear the clip-clop of the horses right there. But you see, this was not good enough because you could easily walk easily, drive your car across any old place. You see, every last one of these streets that crosses this boulevard in its entirety, all the way up there. And of course, people, lived over here and worked over here and had to be back over here by sundown. And so we decided to condemn a huge strip of land because they decided, we can't build a wall because we still want to go over there for good music, right? But we could make it very difficult to pass through there. And so the North Door is located, this is Cesar Chavez now, this is the 4th Street Railroad. That means this is 5th Street, which means this right here is the North Door. Now watch what happens to 5th Street here. North Door is here, East 5th is here. You can no longer cross east to west along 5th Street because it is much more important to move these cars up and down here. But that's not all. You see this intersections at 2nd Street, 3rd Street also obstructed. They're making it harder to move from east to west. 7th Street, you can easily pass right over to the east side. But as everyone knows, you cannot go east to west on 7th Street. You were diverted over to the northbound frontage road. And you might think that, oh, wait, no, but doesn't 8th Street go east to west right here? But you'd think that, but as you see right here, 8th Street is discontiguous right here. And so even though these appear balanced in terms of traffic flow, they are not. And then, of course, 10th Street. And so we're making it worse now. As you know, TxDOT has already started broken ground on expanding I-35. There is a slight potential brightness here. The plan they're advocating says we will let you, in their beneficence, City of Austin pay several $1 billion to put parks on top of this new entrenched I-35, which would be a benefit to a certain extent, right? You can easily walk across here, drive across here. They might actually reconnect 5th Street at some point. That is one vision for the future. Another vision for the future is advocated by my friends at Rethink 35, Reconnect Austin, and other groups, including Save Our Springs, and that is to say that wider won't work and to restore East Avenue, routing interstate traffic that exists along I-35 along Texas 130 to the east. We'll see how this goes. Either would be preferable, honestly, to the current state, but it's a matter of making it wider and paying a lot of money or simply using what we have. And that is why it's hard to get to the north door. But of course, Nerd Nite did not stay at the north door where it was born. It has progressed. It has arrived here, for example, as did, in 1978, a small child born by his parents on an airplane bound from New Jersey that they had apparently sold their Ford Falcon to pay for tickets. And then 46 years later, he got to be on the stage right here on one of the runways of that old airport. So, hi, it's me. This is how it went. This is the airport as it was. The terminal building was right here. This little dot right here, that is the tower that is now over in Tower Park. Well, I can't even see that. But this is as it was for most of my life, honestly, at this point. I'm actually going to do the math. I'm not sure it was most. It might be edging on less than half at this point. But that was too small an airport for a growing city like Austin. And so right as I was graduating high school, they said, we are going to get a peace dividend, and we're going to shut down Bergstrom Air Force Base and move the airport out there. And the dominoes fall, and of course, this huge lot, now owned by the city, right, becomes open for redevelopment. And so plans were launched. You are here at this little star here. You can tell that this lovely green paseo did not happen. The one over here is quite nice, but it's not quite as big. But nobody knew what this was going to be at the time. Much like things like the 15-minute city and Code Next are extremely controversial now, ideas like the new urbanism and density, for walkable developments were also very controversial at this point in history. This is they're emerging into the idea that we might have a post-automotive primacy phase in our history of transportation. And so the people who live over here, across the Airport Boulevard, where the airport will no longer be, were not at all certain it was going to go over here. They acted proactively. They had a neighborhood association. They mooted some ideas. But as things started to come together, they weren't quite sure. This is from the Austin Chronicle back in '98. Where were you in '98? As soon as they saw one of the first plans for it, the first proposed maps, they started looking at the traffic analysis for what was going to go on there, because they didn't know how many people were going to live here. They knew it was going to be more per square unit area that was going to be in their neighborhood, the Cherrywood area. And so they started mooting ideas. It's like they are afraid of the new Mueller, whatever, turning into a rental-dominated student ghetto. The horrors, cheap rent. Oh man, not in this town, buddy. This is telling. Going back to the idea that preserving property values is the primary function of most land use choices, because property is seen as an investment vehicle here. And we stole it, and now we're making money on it 10 generations later. But you got to preserve your investment from, God knows, students. you land around UT is not worth anything because of that. And so, you are here. Welcome to Barrel O Fun. And this is Aldrich Street. And some of you are going to leave this direction tonight. And you'll see that you cannot go this way because there is this little triangle of concrete right here. Some people I've heard call it a longhorn, but I'm calling it the Aldrich angle myself. That will force you to turn right towards I-35 or left towards Manor Road. And you cannot go this way because, heaven forbid, the potential student ghetto and its occupants or anyone else who might be attracted by low rent. I don't know any of those people. Can't go this direction. And mind you, this is potential for neighborhood cut through. I'm going to put my laser on the curtains over here. 235 through their neighborhood. But fundamentally, there are goods and services over there as well. If you want to get to nature's treasures, this is the fastest way. That are being prevented by this little bit of concrete right there. Now then, in a historical irony, now that we know what Miller is and how popular it is and the fact that we get all these people here on a Thursday night, some people who live over here would really like to drive over here, but they can't for some reason. But the other silver lining here is, and nota bene, I am a member of the Bicycle Advisory Council, so this is top of my mind, is that this little island right here is now effectively a modal filter. In traffic control power plants, a modal filter is a device that allows certain modes, say a cyclist or a pedestrian through, but not another, say somebody in an automobile, right? And we now have a pretty decent little cycle track that comes right through here. This is the southbound side of it. I mean, we have, you can see this lovely colored concrete over here and maybe over there. There's a new expanded bikeways. And so now this is a handy route for people to come into Miller from the south, myself included. Whenever I take the train down to MLK Junior Station, this is how I get over to Witchcraft. The Tale of the Gate and the Pork Chop. This actually gets us into the modern era. Between the venerable ancient ancestral home of Nerd Nite, the North Door, and our new modern expanse here. At the height of the pandemic, Nerd Nite relocated to the Vigilante Gastropub, a gaming place for nerds, which is where we are. Over in the Crestview neighborhood, over in the Midtown Commons development. And that area has not one but two impediments to motion. Now, if you know who this guy is, you probably know where we're going with this. This is Greg Kazar. He is the U.S. rep for some of y'all, not me, but some of y'all. And these are two different traffic devices with personality. Here is where Vigilante Gastropub is, still is. And here is what was called the Morrow Pork Chop. I love a name. And the Crestview Gate. The Morrow is the older sibling. The Crestview Gate is the younger sibling. Both pieces of traffic infrastructure designed to protect the good people of Crestview, which is a mid-century subdivision that was out in the middle of nowhere in the 1950s, just north of a chemical facility that is where Vigilante now is. From the other people in the slightly younger subdivision of Highland, which was surrounded Highland Mall, therefore much lower property values because it was closer to that sort of déclassé retail. So let's start with the elder sibling. You can see this is Highland in yellow, Crestview in blue, Vigilante, and the Pork Chop. The Pork Chop was established in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, when Lamar Boulevard was put under US 183, which wasn't even a freeway at that time. There were lights there, but people on Lamar had to get going north and south as fast as they possibly could, so they sunk it, much to regret of anyone who ever has to turn onto Anderson Lane up there. And there's the Pork Chop itself, a close-up. You can see the problem here. People traveling west on Morrow Street are forced to go north on Lamar. They've got to go up to like Runberg or 183 or God knows, Chinatown before they get to turn around. Whereas, which wouldn't be so bad if it was like if they played fair and people from Crestview had to do the same thing. But as you can see, if you are driving from your home in Crestview, you can go straight or left or right, as opposed to everyone over here driving from the direction of the old mall is forced to do that. Foul play, I say. This incidentally, it's not actually a pork chop, I swear. It's not there anymore, but there was never meat there as far as I know. This is actually taken from the user icon, the Twitter user icon of the Morrow Pork Chop account, because we're that kind of nerds. But it was not to last. It gained powerful enemies, including the aforementioned Greg Kazar, who was a city councilman at the time for District 4, which is, curiously, on the east side of Lamar, whereas District 7, my district, was to the west side of Lamar. Leslie Poole, who had a late awakening to transportation issues in her term, was the council member in charge of this area, whereas Greg was over here. And he crowed and worked with people in his neighborhood to recreate this intersection. You can see all of these various great improvements over here, ADA ramps, closed driveways for fewer conflicts, have this little tiny thing that says median island removed, and that is the death knell for the Morrow Pork Chop. Before and after. You see with this a little bit of impetus from people who you might not listen to otherwise, people on what was previously the bad side of the neighborhood back in the 70s, can make a difference. And this little bit of added right of way enables not just actually being able to make a left turn onto Lamar, wild, I know, right? Or go straight in the direction of Crestview, but also bi-directional bike lanes over here and a really wide sidewalk over here. This is a win-win all around. But even once its watch was ended, it's still, wait, there is another. And that was the Crestview Gate. Here marked here with an X because I, for some reason, chose red to represent Midtown Commons here. This is again his vigilante and the rest of the poor innocents over in Crestview who did not want whatever happened here to invade their space. You see, this is a former chemical facility. There was an airport over here way back in the day. Up until a couple years ago, there was a really creepy old lumber yard over here. If you ever waited for the train there at night, creepy. But when this was being put up, it was much higher density. This is an apartment complex with mixed-use retail and the like right there. And so people up here were, oh no, who's going to move into that apartment complex? I'm sure not going to be as expensive as owning a tenth of an acre over here in our Crestview. Those people could be anyone, and they're transient, they're apartment renters, goodness. And so we needed to have a road over here for emergency access. But they insisted that we also have that to keep anyone from using that road unauthorizedly. Actually, that picture's really depressing, honestly. More festive. Merry Christmas, y'all. From the Crestview Gate. Actually, this is now the ghost of Christmas past, because there's one thing for certain: it is dead as a doornail. You see, all of these small unit homes, these apartment complexes, really wanted to get through here. And as certain cyclists among you will know, there's not even room on the other side of this to get a bike through. People came through and crashed this gate. It was actually designed to be separable in case a fire truck really needed to get through there. It did not want to screw around with this little lock. And so this thing was hanging open half the time anyway. And so rather than spend a huge amount of taxpayer money repairing it, it was vandalized regularly, and not always by somebody who had a label printer and too much time at home, and a particular bent, dislike for Leslie Poole. It was regularly broken, tagged, and at least once, just completely plowed down both sides of the gate. And so, for fiscal responsibility reasons as well as equity reasons, it eventually came down as well. Community input involved in a project adjacent to the one that took down the Morrow Pork Chop was overwhelmingly against it. Very few people actually supported the existence of this gate. There are a few dissenters, soon-to-be former council person Leslie Poole among them, who defended it for a while, but eventually the vote went the other way. And everyone was happy. As you see, there was actually a happy hour going on over here at the demise of the gate. And it is remembered fondly. So what have we learned? Well, we learned that impediments to motion exist all throughout our fair city. And they apparently have a mad hate-on for places where nerds congregate. Because they're nerds of all colors and income levels. And some of those nerds get excluded from going where they want to, when they want to. But also, while the impetus to exclude can lead to some pretty awful decisions on a municipal level that last for a generation or two, you can use a system plus maybe a little bit light vandalism, organizing, and friendly city council people to make a change for the better. And even when something stays in place, it can still have unexpected consequences if you look to the right places. Well, that's it. My name is Russell Taylor. It's my contact info. Find my website. And ask me a question, y'all.
Hi. All right. So the way that this works, for those of you who are new, is that if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you, and you can ask it. We do ask that your question be a question and not a manifesto or a comment. So with that being said, who's got the first question? Mickey.
So I loved how you focused on Nerd Nite locations. What's the biggest bee in your bonnet right now? What's the worst impediment?
The worst impediment to my interest is actually an institutional landowner. You may have heard of them. It's Union Pacific. They are obstructing at least two really good pieces of infrastructure they like to build in town. The Shoal Creek bike path currently has to cross the access road to 183 twice because they will not share their right-of-way up there. And this is a link that will be able to make it easier to go from anywhere in Midtown up to Austin Beer Works, which is important. But it's also the same company, same rail company that is preventing a tunnel from being created under their railroad downtown. If you ever get to the end of the north end of the Pfluger pedestrian bridge, and you see this awesome apartment complex that looks like it's been like cleft by like a cleaver, right? There's a very nice path right through it. And say, wow, if I could ride my bike right through there, I could be downtown in an instant. That's because that was the plan, but they stopped negotiating with the city and said, no, we're just not interested in you putting a tunnel under our tracks here. And so it's like, this is the bee in my bonnet, and there's really no resolution for it at the moment. Time.
All right, so that was a great first question. Do we have any other questions? Back here. Best seat in the house.
Ooh, fancy.
Hi. So I wanted to ask, like a part A and B. So has the city of Austin, are they calling for more connectivity? And if so, is it mainly from like east to west, or are they calling for it just all over?
There are, in terms of car movement, there are calls for connectivity. We have several east and west improvements being made. I know the East Breaker, especially as the Eastern Crescent develops, those all modes of transportation need to be able to make it out there more conveniently. I know there's one on East Breaker Lane currently. It's being extended out to the new Samsung area, and there's a few other corridor improvement projects going on as well. The current big motion is going on in actually building out multimodal infrastructure along currently existing right-of-ways. There is a proposal before council called City Leap, which would be to dedicate lane width to public transportation and active transportation on any road that has has two or more lanes in each direction. So that would improve your ability to get across town in a car because it'd be safer on a bike or by foot. And I know the pedestrian infrastructure is also being built out pretty rapidly. We have a few pots of bond money that are being used to make both actual sidewalks and to configure certain low-speed local roads so they'll be comfortable for pedestrians to use as well. Was that A and B? Awesome.
All right, question over here.
Oh, no.
Please explain the Bicycle Advisory Council and how you as a representative represent the interest of cyclists for those of us who are not on the council?
And so the Bicycle Advisory Council is what's called an associated entity of the City of Austin. There's also a Pedestrian Advisory Council and several others. These are entities that advise city units, including the City Council, on issues in which they're experts. I'm on the Bicycle Advisory Council because I'm a bike dork. What we do primarily is get input from different city departments on upcoming infrastructure developments, issues of concern to cyclists in the area, including things like automated vehicles in the bike lane and new laws regarding things that might affect it coming down the pike from the legislature to the city council. We advise council every once in a while. Somebody who has a concern can contact me or another member, or just come grab one of the 3-minute talking sessions we have before every meeting. We meet once a month on the Tuesday of the month, which I've forgotten now. I think it's the second one. Whenever it pops up on my Google Calendar, and bring issues of concern to talk about. So yeah.
All right, we're 3 for 3 on good questions. Do we have any others? Well, in that case, let's give a round of applause to Russell. That was awesome.